My name is TerryDavidMulligan. This is Mulligan Stew, the podcast. Music, film, food, and wine. Film is our subject today. The Calgary International Film Festival is currently on and screening Saturday at 2:45 at Eau Claire Cinema 3 in Calgary is an amazing documentary called Kímmapiiyipitssini, The Meaning of Empathy, a study of survival, of love, and the collective work of healing in the Kainai First Nation in Southern Alberta, in a Blackfoot community facing the impacts of substance abuse, substance use, and a drug poisoning epidemic. And it draws a through line between the effects of colonial violence on Blackfoot land and the people and the ongoing substance use crisis. I'm going to talk to the director, Máijá Tailfeathers. And she has really put her heart and soul into this film. It took her 5 years to conceive, fund, gather, shoot, edit, and post. And it's all on the screen. If you can't get to that cinema, 245, Eau Claire 3, Saturday, Sunday, it will become a video on demand in Canada. And it will have a life around the world, I'm sure, because this is not just a regional story. This is the story of an indigenous nation being crushed by colonialism. And then we wonder why they can't recover. I mean, it was a land of buffalo. They slaughtered the buffalo. They were freedom. They could go anywhere they wanted. Then came the CN rail line across Canada. They had to have a pass for their own lands. Anyway, Máijá is going to speak her truth. Find yourself in this story if you can. We'll give you a link on our website, Mulligan Stew Podcast, that will help you find more information should you care to. Thank you. The name of this film that we're going to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, is Kímmapiiyipitssini. It took me 24 hours to learn how to say that, even remotely close. And I have the director on the line, Máijá Tailfeathers. Well, this is a hell of a movie. And I know that it took 5 years of your life to shoot, to edit, to pull together, to bring your heart through. You can see the passion on the screen. You can see your concern on the screen. And so it begs the big question, Máijá. Were there times when you were shooting it for them, the people you were shooting, your actual blood reserve? Or is it for us to know what this story was, or is it for all of us?
Well, thank you for everything you said. Yeah, it's for everybody. Initially, I made the film because I was hearing about everything that was happening on the front lines from my mother, who's featured in the film, and I was also just witnessing this massive community mobilization to try and save lives. And what I was seeing in the news media wasn't portraying all of that hard work. It wasn't showing the strength of the community and that community mobilization. And I felt compelled to present the public with a portrait of the community that I saw as a community member, which is a very strong community that cares deeply about our future. And I wanted to show the rest of the world how hardworking our community is and how desperately people were fighting to save lives and, facing seemingly insurmountable barriers. But I also wanted to make the film for my community and for other Indigenous communities who are facing the same crisis that we've been dealing with for 7 years now. I started out with a very, I guess, novice basic understanding of harm reduction and of substance use disorder. I had witnessed it in my family, but had never lived with substance use disorder myself, and knew so little about harm reduction. And so in this journey, I learned so much about harm reduction from people working on the front lines and from people whose lives have been saved by harm reduction measures. And so I wanted to be able to provide my community and other Indigenous communities with an opportunity to see how harm reduction works through the lived experiences of those living with substance use disorder, or people who are in recovery, and also people who are providing those services on the front lines.
Would you explain, please, for those of us who have never been and will never be in the Harm Reduction Center, how different it is from any care facility that we've known in past years? It's a completely different system.
Yeah, well, harm reduction, it means a lot of things, but it essentially is is a way of meeting people where they're at in terms of substance use disorder. It doesn't ask of people to quit using cold turkey because the evidence shows that in many cases that can lead to death when it comes to opioid addiction. And harm reduction understands that every individual's journey through recovery is going to be different, and that it is very often inhumane to expect people to quit cold turkey. And so harm reduction offers alternatives. It offers a more gentle approach to recovery, and it's often perceived as like a form of enabling. And I think that largely has to do with just miscommunication and misunderstanding about what it actually is. And so Kímmapiiyipitssini, this Blackfoot teaching, which is about giving empathy to others, especially those who are suffering, I find is very much in line with the ethics of harm reduction, which is to have compassion and empathy for people who are living with addiction or substance use disorder.
I was just realizing now, Elle, that you shot this through the COVID lockdown. If you shot this, were you still shooting when the lockdown came?
Yeah, we were actually in the edit at that point, but we did go back and do some pickups the following summer just to check in with some of our participants and see where things were at with them, so that we could kind of tie up the story. But yeah, the pandemic definitely threw a wrench in our plans in terms of the edit and also just the final footage we wanted to shoot.
Can I tell you about a couple of my favorite scenes? Because this, I started right at the very beginning in the words that come on the screen when you first screen the film. This film contains childhood sex abuse, drug and alcohol use, foster care, overdoses, residential schools, racism, and racialized violence, sexual assault. Some people passed on. But what it didn't say on that screen was this film also contains hope. It has hope. You've actually found hope in all of this.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, thank you. That was the intention with the film, and yeah, the content warning at the beginning is really for Indigenous viewers in particular who know and can relate to all of those issues. And I feel like we can't talk about Indigenous people and substance use disorder without talking about historical trauma and the ongoing trauma that Indigenous people are facing through systemic inequity like poverty, lack of access to clean drinking water in many cases, lack of access to safe, supportive, stable housing, all of the things that many Canadians take for granted, Indigenous people do not have access to. And I feel like you can't talk about addiction or substance use disorder without talking about colonialism and all of the damage that it's done and continues to do. So, yeah, and I wanted people to walk away also with hope, like you said, and so thank you for mentioning that, because I don't want especially Indigenous viewers to walk away feeling like there is no hope, and to me personally, I feel that harm reduction is a form of hope. It's an alternative. It's a way of just trying a different route, because the abstinence model, 12-step programs, AA, NA, all of those things work for some people, but they don't work for everybody, especially people with opioid addiction. And so I wanted to present a portrait of hope, and I wanted to celebrate the strength of my community and all of the hard work within the community, and also celebrate my people's capacity for love and despite everything we've been through, there's still so much love and strength and beauty within the community.
Máijá Tailfeathers, the director of the documentary Kímmapiiyipitssini, The Meaning of Empathy. about the Blackfoot Nation, Southern Alberta, specifically Lethbridge. There are two moments that just will stay with me forever. Were you always going to be the narrator?
No. I was very resistant to being the narrator. I felt very conflicted about how I fit within the story, but then realized that it was important for me to be able to go on this journey with the audience, and this journey of understanding of, what all of this means and how all of the pieces of the puzzle fit together. And yeah, and while we were making the film, some really tragic things happened within my family, and yeah, I felt, I guess, compelled to be part of the story as well.
Did shooting the film help in your healing at all?
Yeah, I think it did. I don't know if we'll ever heal from the loss of my cousin, but I think that working on this film gave me a much deeper understanding of her struggles, and
Yeah.
how we as a family failed her, and how we could have done more if we'd understood the nature of substance use disorder and harm reduction, and been more compassionate towards her instead of expecting her to quit cold turkey.
Here's one of the moments that your narrated history of the Blackfoot Nation, where they were originally, how they were just taken over. Literally, we all showed up. And the life that those people knew hundreds of years ago was completely wiped out. It was just done. And with it, their means to exist. If you wonder why some of these people are damaged, that's where it started. It started right there. And then there's that moment when the guys are outside the Scotia Bank. It's nighttime. And they start a chant. They start a song. You keep the voices, you keep the song, but you change the background from the Nova Scotia Bank, the Bank of Nova Scotia, to the plains, the vista, the grasses, the tall grasses, the mountains. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
It places the song exactly where it should be, back outside.
Yeah. It's the work of the Sage Clan is incredible. They volunteer countless hours to serve and support the most marginalized population, which is often, the people who are without homes and living with substance use disorder on the streets of Lethbridge, Alberta, and they face just the most ugly forms of violence and degradation, and the Sage Clan is there every week to serve that population and offer them the humanity that they're so often stripped of every day in Lethbridge, and they do that through Kímmapiiyipitssini, through empathy, and they also offer that cultural support that I think is missing, and so that moment where we hear them singing is just so beautiful, and I remember the first time I walked with the Sage Clan, there was just this constant singing. There were different members of the Sage Clan who would sing just as we walked, and it was so nice and soothing and powerful, and a reminder of who we are as Blackfoot people, that our culture is still very much alive, our spirituality and ceremonies are alive, and our language is alive despite everything we've been through. And going back to that historical segment that we see in the film, it's, for me, it was about recognizing that history and thinking about how quickly things changed for all of us, and how drastically things changed. It literally took my breath away. I'd created like a post-it note historical timeline on my living room wall. And I stepped back and looked at it and was moved to tears, because it's like I can't even imagine experiencing what my ancestors experienced in the not so distant past, in terms of everything that was taken and destroyed, and the expectations that were placed on us to survive without anything, really.
I knew this was going to be tough. Has the film been screened in Lethbridge?
So we really, really wanted to do an in-person public screening for the community, but we had to do online screenings for Kainai. But there have been some private screenings in Lethbridge, and I have received feedback from community members, and but I do look forward to receiving feedback from the broader public who are not from Kainai.
Elle Tailfeathers, the director of the documentary Kímmapiiyipitssini, The Meaning of Empathy. I'm hoping that, well, the broader public, as shown in the film, some of them are the ones with the signs around the treatment center, and they don't want you there. They don't understand. They just want you gone.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if the power of this film can find the heart of some of them. That's what I'm hoping.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope so too. I think, again, people don't understand or often forget that people with substance use disorder are human beings, and they have families who love them, and they deserve the dignity of the healthcare services that they require as people with substance use disorder. And when the supervised consumption site closed in Lethbridge, the number of deaths within our tribe or within our nation skyrocketed. We had this last year, since the closure. I guess it's almost been 2 years since the closure of the consumption site. We've seen the highest rates of death due to drug poisoning or overdose within our community, and that directly correlates with the closure of that site. And so I certainly hope that people understand the necessity for harm reduction services after watching this film, if they do watch the film.
Elle Tailfeathers, the director of the documentary Kímmapiiyipitssini, The Meaning of Empathy, about the Blackfoot Nation, Southern Alberta, specifically Lethbridge. I'm hoping that it begs two questions. Can you explain briefly, because it's very involved, the role of the consumption center and why it was closed? That's a two-part question.
Sure. So the supervised consumption site, that was part of Arches, a service in Lethbridge, was for people with substance use disorder. It provided harm reduction services. People who were in active addiction used the site to consume whatever substances they were dependent on, and there were staff present at the site to assist in the case of an overdose. And what we know with supervised consumption sites, especially the one in Lethbridge, is that there were no fatal overdoses. There was always someone there to assist when an overdose happened, to save a life, because you can't. The way it works with recovery is that it's a long, complicated process. People relapse. People are going to end up using again during that process, but we have to have hope and faith that it's a complicated journey, and that relapse is not the end. It's not failure. It's a natural thing that happens, but you can't recover if you're dead. And so harm reduction offers people the opportunity to fail many times if that's what happens, but to succeed ultimately in recovery, if that makes sense. And so that supervised consumption site offered people a second chance, a third chance, many chances. And addiction is not something that should be criminalized. It's a public health issue, and we need to change the way that we treat people with substance use disorder, and we need to change our approach to addiction as a whole, because so often it's placed within the realm of criminal justice when really it's a public health issue. And we need to have compassion for people who live with substance use disorder. And so the closure of that site was so harmful to people with substance use disorder, but also harmful to their families and the communities they belong to. The amount of grief that we're experiencing within our community of Kainai is just so overwhelming. There isn't a single family who has not lost a loved one or many loved ones to this crisis, and that pain that leads people to use is 100% connected to everything we've been through as a people and continue to experience as a people because of colonization.
Why is it closed?
It closed under the auspices of financial mismanagement, under the United Conservative Party. There was an audit and there was supposedly financial mismanagement, so the site was closed permanently. However, when there was an audit done, and actually a forensic audit, an investigation, they discovered there was no financial mismanagement. All of the funds were accounted for, and in any other situation, when there's something like claims of financial mismanagement, they let certain staff members go. They don't shut down an entire service, which is literally saving lives. And so I 100% believe that choice was about ideology and not about concerns about mismanagement of government funds. And that was a totally negligent thing to do on the part of the provincial government, because we lost so many people. And again, these were human beings with families who loved them, and who deserved a second or a third or a fourth chance because of everything they've been through. And it's just so disappointing that that political ideologies get in the way of the dignity of human life.
Wow, thank you for that. I loved Robert Kraft's statement at the treatment center. We have to shift to a new way of treating, and it's happening. You just need to give it a chance to work. It may take 2 generations to do it, but at least they're going in the right direction, and they're being led by people like your mom. God bless your mom.
Thank you. Yeah, she's a wonderful person, and I'm so grateful that she allowed me to document her work and this journey.
Okay. A couple of things. You follow George and Leah, who are badly damaged people. They really are. But you can see a sort of George always had a smile on his face. Even if it was loopy, he had a smile. He wasn't a bitter person. And Leah, the same thing. And you knew in following them that you could lose them along the way. That was entirely possible. But I love the way it all turned out.
Yeah, George and Leah are 2 incredible human beings who have been through so much, and still managed to get through life with a smile on their face and to have compassion and kindness for other people. And they belong to a community, and I believe that their addictions are absolutely exacerbated by their living situation, which is that for many years they have been homeless. They're now living in a trailer. George was able to purchase a trailer through residential school. He was able to purchase a trailer, and so now they're living in a trailer, which is really, really great because
it's a home.
Yeah, and it's greatly improved, especially his quality of life. And again, George is a residential school survivor, and I just can't even imagine what he's been through, and the fact that he's able to show strength and dignity and kindness and compassion is profoundly humbling to me, as someone who's never experienced what he has.
GEE-maa-bee-bit-sin, giving kindness to others. It's the longer version of the bumper sticker out there called "Be Kind." Máijá Tailfeathers is the director and the driving force behind this story. I'll give you the Calgary film dates in just a moment, but I have one last follow-up question, and that is that center in Lethbridge that was helping so many recover or on their way to recovery. How do we get it open again?
I think people need to put pressure on the provincial government to reconsider that decision to shut it down. And there have been so many other harm reduction services that have had funding cuts or been closed. And I think it also requires some more public education and understanding that addiction is a public health issue. It's not a criminal justice issue, and that we really need to change our attitudes and have compassion and empathy for people who are living with addiction. And I know that can be hard for people who have experienced, you know, some really uncomfortable things and witnessed some uncomfortable things, um, but harm reduction services are very much a part of changing the current reality we're all in.
Thank you for doing this, for talking to me, and for doing the film and just living this life, giving 5 years of your life. Saturday, September the 25th at 2:45 in the afternoon. It will screen at the Eau Claire 3 in the Canadian Doc Competition. I love the word competition. Anyway, battling directors against directors. Saturday, September 25, 2:45 in the afternoon at Eau Claire 3 at the Calgary International Film Festival. And then Sunday, September 26th, starting at 9 a.m. on Video on Demand. And then you move on, right? You move on?
Yep.
Do you already know what the next film is?
Well, I have a few projects on the go, but I'm currently acting in an Amazon series in
that's
Montreal.
Right. Yes, okay. I forgot about your day job. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Well, when it rains, it pours. Fantastic.
yeah,
This is fantastic.
there's actually a film I'm in called Night Raiders that's also playing at the Calgary International Film Festival. So people should check that one out as well.
It's a good year for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, bless those souls that stood in front of your camera and spoke, not so much to you, but just to the room in general and to your mom and whatever. And I just wish them well. I just get through this year and the next and the next and the next. And the same thing to you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Elle Tailfeathers, the director of the documentary Kímmapiiyipitssini, The Meaning of Empathy, about the Blackfoot Nation, Southern Alberta, specifically Lethbridge. I'm hoping that what Elle is doing and the tale that she's telling and the story she's bringing, and with the help of, podcasts like this, news articles, television shows, whatever, that we can right this wrong, starting with the Substance Center and getting people healed again. Thank you for listening. The details can be found at mulliganstew.ca. Next week, Luke Doucette, Melissa McClellan, better known as Whitehorse.